Hey folks, Ray from DCGameMaker.com here. Now if you just finished unwrapping that new gadget from under the tree, I've got 11 tips to get you started here. Now technically I actually have 34 tips on the site there, but it would take me forever. I'd sound like an auctioneer trying to get through all 34 tips here on YouTube. So instead of consolidating it down to the top 11 tips that are applicable across all these categories, whether it be drones or action cameras or new watches or power meters or even trainers, the things that you need to know to get things started and so that you're not wasting time kind of trying to figure it all out yourself later on. Now, number one is getting it updated. Most of these devices are made months ago and sometimes many, many months ago. And so the firmware on them is a lot older. It's especially true of drones and action cameras, but also watches as well. For example, Fitbit just released a big update last week. GoPro a big update last week for the Hero 7 Black. Drone manufacturers release updates usually once a month. Power meters is true, watches is true. So definitely get that thing updated so you're on the latest version before you do anything, and especially for action cameras. GoPro in particular tends to have their firmware quite a bit older, so you do not want to be in that old stanky firmware. Oh, and before we go too much further, if you find this video useful, whack that like button. It definitely helps out the channel quite a bit. Number two, if you've got a watch or a bike computer, anything that's synchronizing data onwards, you probably want to go ahead and set up your synchronization to Strava or Training Peaks, those third-party sites. It only takes a second to do, and it's much better to do that earlier on than trying to do it later on and backfill that data over. So just take this time now while you're sitting there authenticating into those sites. It only takes usually like 15 to 30 seconds and you're good to go. In the case of Apple products, by the way, Apple does not have any default synchronization to anyone else. It's kind of weird. So instead you want to use third-party apps. My favorite is HealthFit Plus. I'll link to it, or that's right there. I just search in the App Store. And that allows you to sync to Strava and Training Peaks, a bunch of other platforms, Dropbox even. That's what I tend to use for all of my Apple Watch reviews. It just works. It's like $2 or something silly. So definitely grab that. Another item you do not want to be doing while you're standing outside in the cold is customizing your data fields. Now we just did a video on this last week up there, but basically allows you to go ahead and set up your data fields on your watches and on your bike computers. You don't want to wait until you're again standing outside in the cold to try to figure that out and figure out why your pace is missing and all that kind of stuff. None of that's very good. Do that while you're indoors sitting in there. When it comes to configuration on the Garmin side, you're going to do it on the watch itself, whereas like on the Wahoo, Polar, Fitbit, basically everyone else, you're going to do it on the app itself. Number four is to enable 1-second recording. This is particularly on Garmin devices. And so in the case of Garmin devices, they do what's called smart recording by default, which means they record data points every 4 to 7 seconds. That means you're more prone to cut corners on the map, and no one likes to cut corners. You'll also be missing heart rate data and stuff like that. So just dive into the settings and enable 1-second recording. It's on all Garmin devices. You can do it really quickly and easily. For Polar and Suunto and others, it's by default. It just works the way you'd expect it to. 1-second recording and you're done. Note that it does not impact your battery life at all. Instead, it's simply about data storage size, and most Garmin devices can hold like thousands of hours of activities before you have to synchronize off. So it's generally not too much for a problem. Number five, another Garmin tip. If you've got a bike computer like this, but this is a Wahoo one, and you're planning on traveling somewhere, especially over the next little while, definitely download free maps. I'll put a link down to the description below there. That's exact same maps that Garmin uses, except they're free and they don't cost like 80 to 100 bucks for a stupid map. Everyone else in the industry does free maps except Garmin, so you can download them on that site there. It only takes a couple seconds to do, okay, maybe like 4 minutes to do. It's really, really quick and easy, but that way you have maps for outside your region. Garmin only includes maps for the region that you bought the device in. So like if you have a Fenix 5 Plus or if you have a Edge computer, they will only have the maps for your region as opposed to everywhere else. Next, a tip on Suunto and Polar devices. You need to go and enable 24/7 heart rate tracking. So for example, the Vantage M here, the Vantage V, as well as the Suunto 9, those do not by default have 24/7 heart rate tracking enabled. That's mostly because it impacts battery a little bit. So you want to go and enable that if you want to be able to see your heart rate over a longer period of time than just your workouts. Similarly, for Suunto devices, sleep tracking is also not enabled by default. So you want to enable that in the settings too. They're both like right next to each other setting by setting, so you might as well just do both while you're in there. Next, on the action cam and drone side of things, if you've got a GoPro, you're going to want to poke at some of those default resolution and aspect ratio settings. The Hero 7 Black in particular, its default is 4:3, which is good if you know what you're doing, but if you don't know what that means at all, then you probably want to switch it back over to 16:9, which is much more common for HD recordings. And then while you're at it, you want to decide what resolution you want to record at. While the GoPro can record up to 4K resolution, and that's what I tend to use for most all my stuff, that's also a ton more storage space, and it just means like logistically it takes longer to get your footage off the camera. If you don't plan or don't care to use 4K, you could bump it to like 2.7K, which is still really, really high quality, but not as much storage storage space as 4K or go down to 1080p. No matter what you do, go ahead and keep it on at least 60 frames per second. If you want to do slow motion stuff like cannonballing into the water, then you bump it up to 120 or 240 frames per second. But by and large, you don't want to use those settings for like daily stuff. It just records way too much footage. Next, find the accessories that you might like for GoPro. That's probably one of the biggest strengths of GoPro is there are so many accessories out there. I did a big accessories video earlier this year up there in the corner with my top 6 favorite accessories, and some of them are really practical. For example, you can get 2 GoPro batteries and a GoPro charger for 19 bucks, which is like a third the cost of what GoPros cost, if that. So definitely, I'll put the links and all that kind of stuff up there or there, anywhere. But look at accessories. In most cases, you can get non-GoPro branded accessories for like a quarter of the cost or less. And in most cases, they're just as good as the GoPro branded ones. There are some minor exceptions to that, but batteries is not one of those exceptions. They work across the board for me on the Hero 5, 6, and 7 cameras. I use them daily in my action cameras. It's just what I use. Number 10 is drones. Now, if you've got a drone, it's the first time you're using a drone, then definitely number 1, understand your rules with that. And then number 2, go ahead and put those rules for your country, your region, whatever it may be, into the drone software. Also, if you ignore everything else in the manual, just understand how return to home works. That's the most important thing, so that if the drone loses a connection to you, it comes back to you. And by and large, most drone manufacturers do that like out of the box and it just works. But there are some like elevation settings you want to pay attention to when it returns to home. I tend to set mine higher because if I'm flying back, I want to avoid some trees. Again, the newer drones will theoretically avoid the trees, but you want to give it the best chance it has to get back to you as opposed to just hoping it gets back to you. And finally, number 11 on the sports tech tips and tricks is for power meters and trainers. What you want to do is definitely get these calibrated. In the case of power meters, you're going to want to do a couple sprints, like 2 to 4 sprints of maybe 5 to 10 seconds, just on your trainer is perfectly fine. You're basically just kind of wanting to set that power meter and make sure it's nice and snug, especially notable for pedals and crank-based power meters that you want to just go ahead and get that nice and snug. Crank-based meaning spider ones like Quarq and stuff like that. After you've done that, go ahead and do a 0 offset. It's on your head unit, you'll find it no problem there, and that's that calibration. And then try to kind of keep an eye on that number over time, and you want that number to remain roughly consistent, but it does fluctuate with temperature. So as you go outside onto a cold winter day, it'll be different than it would be indoors. Each company, each manufacturer is different. And in the case of like Quarq, every single unit is different. So you could have 2 Quarq units side by side, those numbers are different. So you're generally looking for trending more than you are for an exact number. In the case of trainers, make sure you do a roll down. So that means go ahead and warm up your trainer for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you basically do the spin down process where the app itself, whether it be a third-party app like Zwift or the Wahoo or Tacx or whatever the apps they may have, can go ahead and do a calibration of the trainer itself. Typically speaking, you want to do that like once a week or so just to keep an eye on things, and generally you want to do it after the trainer is warmed up for about 10 to 15 minutes. So with that, there is 11 tips to get you started. If you found this interesting, go and like that like button at the bottom or the subscribe button. I appreciate it. Have a good one.